Thank you for joining Effortless Attraction. My name is Evelyn McAleer. I'm the author of A Life You Want, Effortless, and The Woman's Journey. I'm a life coach, business mentor, and inspirational speaker. And my greatest value is making a difference in people's lives. So I hope through these podcasts, I can make a difference to your life.
Today's Effortless Attraction podcast is sponsored by Hugh McAlinden, Master NLP Practitioner, Keynote Speaker, and High Performance Sales Mentor. With over 30 years' experience, Hugh prides himself on assisting his clients to unlock their true potential and maximize their performance through his success in living principles. As a keynote speaker, Hugh will inspire and motivate your teams to achieve greater success for themselves and for your business. For more information, contact www.hughmcalinden.com.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, whoever can get to join in another Effortless Attraction podcast. And we are on video on Spotify and audio on all other major podcast platforms. Well, today I am very blessed to have a wonderful, very tall, very muscular man sitting across from me. The hard jobs that I have.
I know.
Ciaran May, you are very, very welcome today, Ciaran.
Thank you very, very much for having me down, Evelyn.
Oh, it's very kind of you to make the short journey on such a wonderful sunny day.
And you had offered to come down in person or do it over Zoom. I think that connection, that energy that you pick up, it's always much better doing it in person.
Yeah, lovely. Well, all I have is a wee short bio, and this is all the reading I'm going to do.
Okay.
I'm going to introduce Ciaran here. So Ciaran is the owner of Natural Resilience & Co., founder of Happy Fest, a former international powerlifter turned human behaviour and performance consultant. He teaches the art of living, which he describes as self-development for the soul. Amen. That's me done. Wonderful. I'm going to tell you how I found you, and it was a video that came up on social media, and it's always the energy, it's the feel that I get from someone. Now, I do see a lot of males when they're doing motivation or inspirational, and sometimes they shout a lot, and sometimes they curse a lot, but your energy felt very different, Ciaran, so that's why I reached out to you. So I want to tell us a wee bit about the powerlifting, because when you came in here today, I was like, holy smokes.
So powerlifting was a big part of my adult life, I suppose. I competed at a decent level for 4 or 5 years, represented Northern Ireland at the Commonwealth Championships in Newfoundland and Canada, the home nations, and for me, I really enjoyed it because it was quite logical. It was like what you put in is what you got out. Mm-hmm. And it was all about steady progression. It resonated with me. That small incremental improvements. I loved it. I loved it. And then when lockdown hit, the gym's obviously closed. Mm-hmm. I had 2 young kids at that stage. And I'd achieved a lot in the sport. And my wife just made, she was always very supportive, but she just made a comment one day. And it was more like, I'm glad that you're taking a break from the gym because I've struggled putting both kids together to bed in the evening, and that was it. It was just, and I never went back.
Yeah.
Just very black or white.
Yeah, isn't it amazing then? And she was glad.
She was glad just to have me at home because I trained Monday evening, Wednesday evening, Friday evening, Sunday morning. Mm-hmm. Trained in Balnahinch, weren't getting home till maybe 9:30, 9:45, kids were in bed. And I was probably selfish, but I think in sport, you almost have to have a sense of being selfish or focused or tunnel vision to achieve, or certainly to get to a high level, get to that international level. So I have no regrets per se, but it made me rethink my values. Yeah.
And it has stood to you also, Ciaran. What you have gone through with the mindset, what you put in, you get out. Yeah. And you mentioned a lovely word there, logic. Yeah. And I would say as your path has progressed, do you see there's much more than logic? There's a bigger picture?
Absolutely. I would have been very logical. Like my whole life, I was trying to think things through. I was just brought up that way, talked about fear, like you had to have an exit when you went somewhere. You had to always be alert. And probably in and around the time of COVID, I became a lot less logical and a lot more feeling, feeling what's right, listening to my intuition, giving myself just a bit of breathing space to expand as a human, as a father, as a husband, as a man. And I suppose the journey I'm on at the minute is trying to marry the two, the logical mind with the feeling heart. And I always say to the clients, lead with the heart, but think things through. I think both come into play.
I have noticed with male and female, the form, that men are very quick to answer. For example, I reached out to you the other day, would you like to do a podcast? And I said, yeah, what time? Yeah. Sometimes when I reach out to women, there's a lot more to it. It's not. However, I remember a good friend of mine who's a neuro coach says then men can be too impulsive. They don't think the thing through. They just say, let's go for this. You had a wonderful video up there, and I loved it because it's something that you're doing or have done, and it's about the masculinity. It's about getting back to, you said, showing men, about leadership, about being a real man. What is real masculinity for you, Ciaran?
I think it's a touchy subject. I mean, I've had female family members, the victims of domestic abuse, but I think we throw the term toxic masculinity about too much. I'm not a fan of it. And I think we can't split the several billion people in the world in half and say half of the population are toxic, or they're not in tune with their emotions, or they don't know how to express themselves. So I don't have the answer, and I don't think there is an answer. I don't think, I think everyone is unique. But for me, I'm very passionate about getting men into nature. I'm very passionate about getting men to improve their communication skills, both internal and external. Emotional resilience and intelligence, I think, is huge. And probably my driving force behind that is, I grew up in a housing estate in Belfast with the men in my life, through no fault of their own, they weren't emotionally available, very tough, get up and get on with it, which they needed. There's no doubt about that. But I think resilience is a phenomenal trait. And for me, when I think of resilience, it's maybe the farmer or the dock worker that gets calluses on their hands. But I think a lot of men almost have calluses on their hearts, and things harden over and they don't know how to access that, not realizing the power behind it. Emotions, even emotions such as anger. I think a lot of men have a fear over their anger, and as opposed to expressing it in a healthy way, they repress it, and then as a result of that, you have violence and addiction and assaults. And so for me, I don't have the answer, but what I know is that when you take men away from the pub and get them into nature, up the mountains, into the sea, to have the conversations that our ancestors had, sitting in stone circles, what's your dreams, your aspirations, what's your obstacles, what problems are you facing, how can I help you, how can you help me, how can we see each other as allies as opposed to a threat. I know that something shifts, and I think that ripple effect goes into the homes then, and the wives benefit, and the children benefit, and the colleagues benefit, and the friends and the co-workers, and it's something that I've stumbled into, I think, but I feel so passionate about it, just working with other guys. And I think, I'm 6'4", I'm covered in tattoos. I think
you're like a big teddy bear though, and that's no offense.
Yeah. And I think it works, the image works.
Yeah.
If I go into schools or go into sports teams, I think people look at me and go, oh, he's not this airy-fairy yoga teacher. But then I'm quite spiritual and meditative, and I spend a lot of time reading and journaling. And I think that the hard image with the scars and tattoos maybe initially grabs their attention, and then you can get under the masculinity,
And funny, that's something I never noticed, was the tattoos. Now, and they're there, like I can see them now. It was that when you just said spirituality there too, and it's something, funny enough, I would speak about quite a lot. But it's only when you get to know someone or feel of their own energy where you want or choose the subject or topic to go. So you were born and reared in the city. You moved out of that. So how did nature come a-calling? Because you grew up in a quite a built-up area.
Just off the Falls Road, the late 80s, early 90s, which...
Yeah, lovely times.
Yeah, and listen, I've had a great childhood.
Yeah.
it's only now, I mean, at conversations recently about the Good Friday Agreement and how things were, and there, for me, there's no doubt, having lived there, to see the improvement.
Yeah.
But then when you look back, it wasn't normal. You know, you seen like Beachmount, you seen the IRA doing checkpoints, and you seen the army in your garden, and I was shielded from it. And this is where the nature comes in. My let me get this right. My great uncle was shot dead in 1986, and his wife bought a caravan where their honeymoon was, which was in Carnlough in the Glens of Antrim. And as a result of that, my grandparents bought a caravan there as well. So the day school finished in June, right through to the day school started again in September, I spent the whole summer holiday in Carnlough. No rioting. I was shielded from all that.
Yeah.
And what I did, I woke up in the morning, my granny made me a plastic bag with sandwiches, biscuits and juice, and I went up the mountains, into the rivers, exploring this world. And obviously that's childhood, early teen, and then you're too cool to go to a small village, and you think the city becomes more appealing. And then in later years, struggled a bit with anxiety, things like that, and it was getting back into nature, into the sea, into the mountains. And somebody had said about doing inner child work, and a lady I was speaking to at the time, she says, yeah, about colouring in. I went, it's not for me. And she says, well, what did you do as a child that made you happy? And I was like, I went up mountains and jumped off waterfalls, and I went, oh, that's the answer. Like, that's what I was starting to do, and I felt so happy doing it. And I just kind of thought, if this was my job, I would be so happy. Like, this is my passion.
Yeah.
My purpose is to introduce or reintroduce people back into this. How do I get paid for it? Like, how do I make that a thing? How do you monetize the sea and the mountains? And I thought, well, you can't, but if I give something of value while I'm taking these people into nature, then there's the possibility of making it my career.
Yeah.
And I feel very, very blessed that it is. I feel
Isn't
very
it
almost to
wonderful?
the point where it's laughable. You know, I'm going, how has this happened?
Well, when you talk about spirituality, or
Mhm.
people choose to call it energy or whatever, I believe, and I talk about this so many times, the law of Dharma. For your unique gifts and talents and abilities, there's always a unique need.
Mhm.
And doesn't nature provide everything? If we just don't rape it or
Yeah.
just abuse it, everything is there for
Yeah.
us.
It's the greatest school on earth. It teaches you everything you need to know, like even the natural laws. And if you spend a day in nature, you will see all these natural laws of life unfold before you. You know, the fact that every plant and tree grows to its fullest potential. The oak tree doesn't compare itself to the pine tree. The seasons, it's all there. It's all there. And I think that's why depression and that is so high, is because of the disconnection from nature. I certainly think it plays a big part.
Yeah. Oh, it's amazing. And I feel blessed that we get to live in the country. I get educated every day with the bulls and the cows, honestly. Jim knows everything. I even why the wasps are so white. He says they're booted out.
Wow.
I get to hear so much about nature when I want to ask the questions.
Yeah.
It's fascinating that this child sound like Jim now. He says like when I think it was the wasp or the queen, she lays all her workers first, then she lays her kings and queens, then she lays. It's amazing if we people just say, "Oh, it's a tree, it's a flower, it's a thing," but there's a line: "Be still and know."
Love it.
And I bet whenever in nature, because most of your videos are taken there, you probably feel more of a connection there.
I feel home.
Yeah.
I feel home, and I think it's easy. I haven't watched the news in a couple of years, but I think it's easy, even if you've internal strife going on, I think it's easy to see the world as chaotic, but nature shows that there's a perfect order to it. Like even with the queen bee going with the workers and the kings, like there's a beautiful order to nature. And I think when you see that, you realise everything's okay.
Yeah.
Everything's perfect.
It's fascinating. I love looking out the window. One day we could have a rabbit there. The next, I think we had a house martin there. We have
Class.
But I feel they've invited us in.
Yeah.
I'm the visitor here.
Yeah.
I'm only here for a wee while to experience it all. And you're right, nature is key. So many want to say get out for a wee walk, but do you ever see them when people are out walking, if the headphones in, if the music on? Are we kind of missing the point, Ciaran, of being in the nature?
I think it's okay if that's your first step, but I think if you're going to really immerse yourself in nature, then be part of it. You know, be part of it, knowing that you are welcomed in there and that you're every part of nature is the grass or the animal, and you have to be mature about it. You know, you have to play your part.
Yeah.
In this theatre of or game or whatever it is. You know, just leave it in a better place than what you found it.
Yeah. It's amazing, you know, and we watched a programme the other night, how long Earth will last if we do not start, you know, taking care of it. And it's all, in spirituality, you believe we're all part of that. And when we get disconnected, so for example, I spoke about when we get connected to the things that don't serve us, too much social media, too much TV, too much of what other people think. Do you feel that has also an impact on our mental health as well when we disconnect from just the God or the divine and connect to the wrong things?
Absolutely. I think, you know, for me that we're all connected. And for me, disconnection of the self or from relationships or the community or the tribe or nature is what depression or anxiety is, or stress. And I mean, there's studies being done with zoo animals where a zookeeper will buy like a male and a female lion with the sole aim of having them reproduce, so that he never needs to buy another lion again. And the rate to get this female lion impregnated is essentially zero, because they're so depressed, because you've taken them out of their natural habitat, away from their tribe, and you've put them in a perspex cage. And I think that's what's happening when we see people sitting at a computer desk all day, you know, with technology in front of them, eating microwavable meals, not having conversations. Instead of, you know, having conscious conversations with somebody, they're texting. I think that disconnection plays a massive role in mental health issues. And we need to be really careful about it with the likes of AI coming in. Technology was designed to make our lives easier. You know, you were saying about farming. If you were still farming big fields with a shovel, it's backbreaking. So technology can be very, very beneficial. If you get a combine harvester to do the job, then you have more free time to live. But we need to control technology as opposed to it controlling us. And I think there will be studies before the end of this decade about mobile phone and iPad addiction. And it's just dopamine.
Surely.
And dopamine's the molecule of more. So when we get a small release of dopamine, that dopamine just wants more dopamine. And this is why people can sit and scroll. And it's tough, you know. For me as a parent, I need to take personal responsibility, and that's why I would take my son and daughter into nature with me and get them to light fires, and we'll cook burgers over the fire. And of course they're allowed to play their PlayStation, but so long as it's controlled.
Yeah.
You know.
You know, it's a fascinating thing and a wonderful thing that you're leaving for your children, because I do believe this. Honestly, I really do think we're all going to have to learn how to become self-sufficient. So could you imagine, and I think that's probably why a lot of people did struggle too whenever we had lockdown as well, but when we become so reliant on supermarkets, when we become so reliant on Amazon, when we become actually pretty useless. I think, what do I need somebody of that if I can, you know, these things? But what if I was able to grow tomatoes? What if I was able, you know, to work of nature? What if, even if we had been blessed, Willie, with sun here, to solar panels, what if I could use things to become more knowledgeable myself, to become more self-sufficient, and that contact with the ground as well?
Yeah, I mean, that's this morning I run along the beach barefoot, you know, 10 lengths, which is about 4K. And it's not, well, a bit of fitness, but it's just to get the feet in the sand and in the sea, and it does something. It does something. Science is backing it up, but how I feel when doing that, even barefoot hiking, a bit of barefoot hiking on Monday in the Glens of Antrim, how I feel can't be disputed. Yeah,
the Indians or Native Americans had said that was the worst invention, those rubber soles that we wear on our feet. We walk about here, you see, we don't have shoes on today. If I could live my life going about with no shoes, I love it. Yeah, it's all just too much constriction. So, Ciaran, let's get, so I've seen these videos. So you're taking men out to the nature, and I saw a wonderful thing where you light a campfire, and you had words like fear, anger. I thought, well, at least they used them on the pieces of timber and burnt them and used that to benefit themselves for also, you know, for heat. Can you see a difference that you're making to people's lives by what you are doing?
Yeah, I can. And, you know, I've kept in contact with quite a few guys the last couple of years. And for me, it's trying to remain true to myself, but with a vision, you know. And so there's a lot of men that are that are maybe conditioned, you know, very, very strongly. And I can't go in and just say, let's talk about your emotions. I would just be shut down. So some of the things I would do is maybe take them abseiling and blindfold them, and then ask them to lean back with their arms out, and ask them, how did that make you feel? Where in your body did you feel it? How do you usually respond when you feel fear in your stomach? When was the last time you reached for a bottle of drink because you felt fear? What has that done to your relationships, your jobs? So you're starting to crack them open slightly. And then we're using symbolism too, you know, because the subconscious speaks in the form of symbolism. So the whole emphasis on writing the emotion on a piece of wood is that symbolic transmutation of energy, where they would say, okay, well, anger is holding my relationship back, or anger is preventing me from getting a promotion on work. I am choosing to let that go. And does it always work? No, of course not, because the person needs to be really willing and have a really strong desire to do that. But certainly that symbolic gesture of them letting go of something at least make them think different.
Yeah. But you've came through your own bits and pieces as well.
Of course.
And I think anybody who goes down the self-development route, you have to have had, otherwise, why are you doing this?
Yeah.
And the wee bits that I do know is said where you were reared, and yes, I realise we were all reared in fear, although we thought we come through it all right. Yeah. And I really, all somebody has to do is pop a balloon really here, and I could be under the table still from that. But you all worked also, you had the 9-to-5 job, you had that lovely safe number, and then you stepped out into being self-employed. A big fearful decision.
Massive.
And of course, at that wonderful time of COVID.
COVID happened. So I left school. I was always naturally intelligent. My mum was big into reading books, but my mother and father broke up when I was about 15, and I was the oldest. I wouldn't say took it bad, but it certainly impacted me. Stopped going to school, stopped studying, seen education as girly. You know, I remember my father saying, go and get tough hands as opposed to books. And I then left school quite young and went to work on building sites. And I remember on a building site one day in Derry thinking, I've thrown away my education. I'm working 7 to 7, my back's sore. The money I'm taken home after like buying my dinner and that up here isn't worth it. I was doing the door at the weekend just to try and get by as well, and joined the civil service. My parents were delighted because it then to them meant security. And for a while I enjoyed it, but I feel as if it stifled my creativity, where you were told how to think, and you were told, you know, that everything is rigid, that there's only one answer, that you come in at 9, you leave at 5. I've always been a grafter, and I did that for just shy of 12 years. Towards the last 3 years, I had this real yearning in my soul to get back into nature, to help people, and resigned. And I was going to take a career break. I had the career break form written out, and I spoke with people about it. It wasn't this blasé decision, but I remember thinking, I will use that as a security blanket. If this doesn't work out, I can just go back. And I knew that with 2 children and a mortgage, if I went the other route, I would fight tooth and nail. You know, so I resigned. 28 days later, I was gone. Pension was gone, and I was like, right, okay, I have to make this work. COVID happened. I was like, right. So it was a baptism of fire, but it made me, I don't like using the term pivot, it made me adapt massively. And my company's called Natural Resilience, and I remember saying to myself, okay, big shot, now's your time to practice what you preach, be resilient. And I knew I could deal with stressful situations. I knew that I was, you know, I knew how the mind worked. I knew how the human behaviour side of things worked, but I didn't have a business IQ. Nobody in my family was self-employed. And so I decided to start an event called the Rising Tide Network, where I advertised it on LinkedIn and got 25 business owners to meet at sunrise. And I took them into the sea and showed them how to control their breathing in the sea, and that if they could control their stress response in the Irish Sea, 7 o'clock in the morning, they could do it in the boardroom, in the living room, homeschooling, whatever it may be. And I started then coming into contact with these really inspirational, forward-thinking people, and when we picked that whole energy and vibration thing, it's like, right, okay, like there's a completely different world out there, and it just all unfolded in front of me, and I've just followed it. I've just followed it with this real enthusiasm, and I see myself as an apprentice, you know, of a trade, and the trade being business, and I'm just an enthusiastic apprentice, but I love learning more. I love meeting people like yourself. I love having conversations and thinking, wow, this is, like you said earlier about this house and the house in Spain, it just makes things possible.
Yeah.
When you're brought up in fear of, you live in a terraced house in a housing estate, you work 9 to 5, you have this dinner on a Friday because that's what we've always done and that's what we'll always do, and then you see people that go, no thank you, and they start to kind of push the boundaries of what they were. I love that entrepreneurial spirit. And I actually think being an entrepreneur is probably the most spiritual thing you can do, because you have to really get to know thyself. You have to be creative. You have to connect. And I think that's what was missing in me, that spiritual side, that creativity had just been stifled. And now that it's come to the fore and I'm starting to be more expressive, I can never go back.
You feel alive.
I feel alive. I really do. I feel alive. And when I look back those years, I was comfortably numb.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah,
really
that's so wonderful.
numb.
Comfortably numb.
Mm-hmm.
I always say that you're comfortable being uncomfortable.
Yeah, yeah.
Comfortably numb. I know it is, and people say, "Oh, I have no other choice." You know, when you know, it's people's choices really, and it is a fearful thing to step out there and to work for yourself. But as you, it has to be my passion, and it can be. But you can create a business from it. But if you get knocked down the first time, you know, you have to keep the rise, to keep rising and keep going on. Ciaran, I could sit here and talk all day, but I am aware that the cameras can only roll for so long here. Rolling? The day of the film. You have a few events coming up now. By the time this year's going out, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, because I have to give dates and times. This is now August 2023. So what have you coming up, Ciaran?
So I've quite a few things coming up. I have the next Rising Tide event, which is on the 22nd of September with the business owners again. I have a workshop on the 30th of September, which is called Communicate with Confidence, around changing your physiology. I have the men's day, which is the 25th of November. I do that every year and donate money to Movember, and that's called When We Were Kings. And that's there's a great book called Warrior, King, Lover, Magician, Warrior, and it's the archetypes of masculinity, and it's to show men that when they're balanced and grounded, and when they can, you know, manage their emotions and that, then they step into their king energy. So that's in November, and then my big event is in January called The Art of Living, and that's that self-development for the soul, which is, I suppose, tying in modern day personal development with the laws that you see unfold in nature.
Yeah, wonderful. If anyone wants to reach out, they can get you on LinkedIn, Instagram
and Facebook as Natural Resilience.
Yes.
Website's natural-resilience.co.uk, and then LinkedIn is Ciaran May.
Ciaran May. Well, Ciaran May, thank you so much for your time today, and I have no doubt somewhere in the future we're going to get chatting again.
I hope so. I really hope so. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Ciaran. If you would like to become a paid subscriber to Effortless Attraction, you'll find the link in the main profile. Every subscription makes a difference to my life, and you'll also receive exclusive podcasts. Thank you so much for your continued support.